The package outside her door looked like it had been there a while. I noticed it the second time I walked past the staircase that morning. Brown cardboard, slightly damp on one corner. The kind of box delivery drivers leave when they don't want to wait for someone to answer. It was sitting right outside her door. I paused halfway up the stairs with a grocery bag in one hand. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it longer than necessary. Then I kept going. That was the thing about living in someone else's house. You learn which small things belonged to you and which ones didn't. Even curiosity had a line. My room was the one upstairs, the one with the window facing the narrow street. I'd been renting it for 4 months. Cheap rent, quiet neighborhood, a house that smelled faintly like laundry detergent and old books. And her mornings usually followed the same rhythm. I'd come down around 8, sometimes earlier if sleep didn't cooperate. She'd already be in the kitchen, standing by the counter with a mug in her hands. She was 43. I knew that because the lease paperwork had her birth date on it, and somehow that fact had stayed in my head longer than my own bank password. Her name was Sara, not Mrs. Anything, just Sara. When I stepped into the kitchen that morning, she was by the window pouring tea into a thermos. The light from outside caught the silver strands in her dark hair. "You're up early," she said without turning around. Her voice was calm, like she'd already been awake long enough to settle into the day. "Couldn't sleep," I said. That was mostly true. She glanced over her shoulder then. "Just a quick look. You say that a lot." I leaned against the counter and reached for a napkin, folding it once without really thinking about it. "Yeah," I said. "Bad habit." She gave a small smile. Not the kind that expects a response. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it needed to. There were moments like that sometimes, quiet ones where neither of us moved right away. Not uncomfortable, just noticeable. I found myself looking at her hands while she screwed the lid onto the thermos. Long fingers, a thin silver ring on one hand that I'd never asked about. She caught me looking, not directly, just the way her eyes flicked up for half a second. I looked away first. "So," she said, leaning back against the counter. "Work today. Afternoon shift." She nodded like she already knew. She probably did. Living in the same house, you learn someone's schedule without trying. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. I cleared my throat. "There's a package outside your door." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Is there?" "Yeah. Looks like it's been there since last night." She stared at the counter for a moment like she was thinking about something else entirely. Then she shrugged lightly. "I'll grab it later." I waited for her to ask what it looked like or who it was from. She didn't. Instead, she picked up her mug and took a slow sip. "You're quiet today," she said. "I'm always quiet." She tilted her head. "Not always." For some reason that made my chest feel tight. I folded the napkin again. Smaller this time. Sometimes I thought about texting people in the morning. Old friends. My sister. Anyone. Most of the time I typed a message and then deleted it before sending. It was easier that way. Sara walked past me toward the hallway, her shoulder brushing the air near mine, but not quite touching. "I'll be out for a bit," she said. "Okay." She stopped by the front door, slipping on her coat. Then she looked back at me. "Hey, if you pass by the stairs again," she said casually, "could you check if the package is still there?" I nodded. "Sure." She opened the door and stepped outside. The house went quiet again. A few minutes later, I walked back toward the stairs. The package was still sitting there. But now there was something different about it. A small white envelope had been taped to the top, and written across it, in neat handwriting, was her name. Sara. The envelope wasn't thick, just a single sheet of paper inside. I stared at it longer than I should have. It wasn't my name on it. It wasn't even meant for me to touch. But standing there in the quiet hallway, the house still holding the faint warmth from the kitchen, it felt strange leaving it there. Sara's handwriting wasn't on it. That I noticed immediately. I turned it slightly with my finger, reading the printed shipping label on the box beneath it. No sender name. Just a return warehouse address from a city 3 hours away. I stepped back. Curiosity had a line. By the time Sara came back that afternoon, the sun had shifted across the living room floor, and the house felt different, fuller somehow, like it always did when she was around. I was at the kitchen table with my laptop open, but not really working. My fingers hovered over the keyboard while the same sentence blinked half-finished on the screen. The front door clicked open. Her footsteps came down the hallway, steady and familiar. "Hey," she called. "Hey." She set her bag on the chair and noticed the box right away through the open doorway. "Oh," she said softly. "You weren't kidding." I leaned back in the chair. "Nope." She walked over slowly and crouched down beside it. The envelope crinkled slightly when she peeled the tape back. I tried not to stare, but I did. Her brow tightened just a little as she read the paper inside. Not alarmed, just thoughtful. "Everything okay?" I asked. She folded the paper once and slipped it back into the envelope. "Yeah," she said. "Just something I ordered months ago." She carried the box into the kitchen and set it on the counter. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she opened a cabinet and pulled out the thermos from that morning. "Tea?" she asked. I nodded. "Sure." She poured it into 2 mugs like it was the most normal thing in the world, sliding one across the table toward me. Our fingers almost touched when I picked it up. "Almost." "You're home a lot during the day?" she said after a moment. "Night shifts," I replied. "And freelance stuff." She nodded like she was piecing together a puzzle she hadn't asked about before. "I used to work nights," she said. "Really?" "At a hospital. Front desk." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "You learn strange things about people at 3 in the morning." I smiled faintly. "Like what?" She shrugged. "That loneliness looks the same on everyone." The kitchen clock ticked again. I took a sip of the tea. It had cooled slightly, but it was still warm. "You live here alone now?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted. "For a few years," she said. She didn't say divorced. She didn't say anything at all about why, but something in her voice made the answer obvious. I looked down at the mug. Sometimes I caught myself imagining things I had no business imagining, like what it would feel like to sit across from her every morning like this. Not as a tenant, just there. That thought alone made me feel stupid. She was 43. I was 27. Life didn't overlap that way. Sara stood and moved behind my chair, reaching for something on the shelf above the table. Her sleeve brushed lightly against my shoulder. Just fabric. But it made me freeze for a second. "Sorry," she said quietly. "It's fine." She stayed there a moment longer than necessary before stepping away. When she walked back toward the counter, she looked at me with a small smile. Not flirtatious, just warm. And I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone had finally noticed I was in the room. The house had its own sounds at night. Pipes settling in the walls. The refrigerator humming like it was thinking about something. And sometimes, footsteps on the stairs. I had learned the rhythm of Sara's footsteps without meaning to. Slow, steady, never rushed. Usually sometime after 11 when she went down to the kitchen for tea. That night I heard them again. I was sitting on my bed with my laptop open, but the screen had gone dark. I'd been staring at my phone for 10 minutes, rereading a message I had typed but never sent. "Hey, are you still awake?" It was stupid. We lived in the same house. The footsteps paused outside my door. Then a soft knock. 2 taps. "You awake?" her voice said quietly. I sat up too fast. "Yeah." The door opened just a few inches. She didn't step inside. "Sorry," she said. "Kitchen light was on. I thought you might still be up." "I was just working." She nodded like she believed me. Her hair was pulled loosely over one shoulder, and she had that same thermos in her hand. The hallway light behind her made everything feel softer somehow. "Tea?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure." We didn't turn on the kitchen lights when we got downstairs. Just the small lamp near the sink. The room felt smaller that way. Sara poured tea into 2 mugs again. It had become a quiet routine over the last week. Not planned, just happening. We sat across from each other at the table. Steam drifted slowly from the cups. "You're quieter lately," she said. "I'm always quiet." She gave me that look again. The one that said she didn't fully believe me. "Something on your mind?" I tapped my finger against the mug. Once. Twice. "Not really." A pause stretched between us. Then she said softly, "You know you don't have to pretend you're fine all the time." I laughed a little under my breath. "That obvious?" "Only if you're paying attention." Her words hung there. For a moment, I wondered what it would feel like to say the thing that had been circling my head for days. How easy it felt sitting here with her. How strange it was that the house didn't feel empty anymore. But then another thought pushed in right behind it. She was my landlady. 43. and the kind of woman people probably expected to have her life figured out. You ever regret staying here? I asked suddenly. She looked surprised. In this house? Yeah. She leaned back slightly, considering it. Sometimes, she admitted. Places hold memories longer than people do. That answer felt heavier than the question. I glanced down at the table. What about you? She said after a moment. Regret moving in. I shook my head. No. The word came out faster than I meant it to. She watched me carefully then, like she was trying to read something between the lines. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street. Sara stood and carried her mug to the sink. I should probably get some sleep, she said. Yeah. But she didn't leave right away. She walked back toward the table and stopped beside my chair, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of soap on her sleeve. Her hand rested lightly on the back of the chair. Hey, she said quietly. I looked up. For a second, neither of us moved. Her eyes dropped briefly to my mouth, then back to my eyes, and something in my chest tightened like a door almost opening. I could have leaned forward. Just a little. Just enough. But then, the front gate outside rattled. Both of us turned toward the sound. Sara stepped back first. Too quickly. Probably the neighbor's dog, she said, though it didn't sound like she was sure. She picked up the thermos and headed toward the stairs. Halfway up, she paused. Then she looked back at me, like there was something she almost said, but didn't. A few days passed where we barely saw each other. Not intentionally, just timing. My shifts ran late. Her mornings started earlier. Sometimes I heard her moving downstairs while I was half asleep, the sound of the kettle or a cabinet closing softly. But we didn't sit together again. No tea. No quiet kitchen conversations. At first I told myself it was normal. People lived in the same house without orbiting each other all the time. Still, something about the silence felt deliberate. Like we were both pretending that moment in the kitchen hadn't almost happened. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The sky outside was turning that dull blue-gray that comes right before night settles in. The kind of evening where everything feels paused. Sara was in the small backyard. I saw her through the kitchen window. She was sitting on the old wooden bench near the fence, wrapped in a light sweater, holding a mug with both hands. I stood there for a second before stepping outside. She looked up when the door creaked. Oh, she said. You're home early. Yeah. I hovered near the steps. You mind if I sit? She shook her head. No. The bench was narrow enough that our shoulders almost lined up, but not quite touching. The air carried that cool evening smell, damp soil, distant smoke from someone's chimney. Neither of us spoke for a while. Sara stared at the fence like it had something interesting to say. You've been avoiding the kitchen, I said finally. She let out a small breath through her nose. That obvious. Only if you're paying attention. She glanced at me when I said it. A faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Then it disappeared again. I just thought it might be better, she said. For who? She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened around the mug slightly. For both of us. That landed heavier than I expected. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. You think sitting at a table drinking tea is dangerous? Sara laughed quietly. No. Another pause. Then she said, but the way you look at me sometimes is. My chest tightened. I didn't realize I was that obvious. You aren't, she said softly. Not to most people. She turned slightly toward me now. But I noticed things. The backyard felt smaller suddenly. Like the fence had moved closer. I'm not trying to make things weird, I said. I know. Her voice was calm. Gentle even. That almost made it worse. I stopped, running a hand through my hair. Words felt clumsy now. Sara waited. Not pushing. Just watching. I like talking to you, I said finally. Her eyes softened a little. I like talking to you too. But, she looked back at the fence again. But you're 27. And you're 43. The numbers hung there between us. Real. Unavoidable. You say it like it's illegal, I muttered. It's not about illegal, she said quietly. It's about what happens after. The evening wind rustled the leaves above us. I found myself looking at her hands again resting on the mug. I don't think you're giving me enough credit, I said. She glanced at me. For what? For knowing what I want. That made her still. Completely still. For a long moment neither of us moved. Then she said something so quietly I almost missed it. And what is it you think you want? My heart was beating too fast now. Too loud. I turned slightly toward her, close enough to see the reflection of the fading sky in her eyes. I think. The word stopped halfway out, because suddenly she wasn't looking at my eyes anymore. Her gaze had dropped to my mouth again, and the space between us felt like a question neither of us had answered yet. I didn't finish the sentence. Maybe I was going to say something honest. Maybe reckless. I don't know anymore. Because Sara stood up. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just slowly. Like someone remembering something important they almost forgot. I should go inside, she said. Her voice wasn't cold, but it was careful, like she was placing distance between two fragile things. I stayed on the bench while she walked back toward the kitchen door. For a second I thought she might look back. She didn't. The door closed softly behind her, and the backyard felt bigger again. Too big. The next morning the kitchen was empty. No thermos on the counter. No mug by the sink. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and a note stuck to the fridge with a magnet. Out early today. No name. But the handwriting was hers. I stood there longer than necessary. Then I grabbed a glass of water and went back upstairs. Days started passing differently after that. Sara wasn't avoiding the house. I still heard her sometimes. The front door opening late. Cabinets closing softly downstairs. But we stopped crossing paths. It was almost impressive how well two people could move around the same space without actually meeting. Once I heard her on the phone in the hallway. Her voice softer than usual. I know, she said quietly. I just need a little more time. I didn't hear the rest. I closed my door before I could. A week later I came home from work earlier than expected. The house smelled faintly like something baked. I stepped into the kitchen and stopped. Sara was standing at the counter with someone else. A girl. Maybe 19, 20. Dark hair like Sara's, tied in a loose bun. She was sitting on one of the stools, scrolling through her phone, while a half-finished plate of cookies sat between them. Sara looked up when she saw me. Oh, she said, surprised. You're home. Yeah. My eyes flicked toward the girl without meaning to. Sara followed the look. Daniel, she said gently, this is Emma. My daughter. Something inside my chest shifted slightly. Not painful. Just unexpected. Emma gave a quick wave without looking up fully from her phone. Hey. Hey, I said. Sara brushed flour from her hands. She's staying for a few days, she added. Okay. The kitchen suddenly felt like a place I didn't quite belong in anymore. I'll stay out of the way, I said. Sara frowned slightly. You don't have to do that. But the words didn't sound certain. Emma stood up then, stretching. I'm going to take a shower, she said, already halfway toward the hallway. The moment the bathroom door closed upstairs, the kitchen went quiet again. Sara leaned back against the counter. Her arms folded loosely. I was going to tell you, she said. About your daughter. About a lot of things. I nodded slowly. The smell of warm sugar from the cookies hung in the air. Well, I said lightly, now I know. She looked like she wanted to say something else. But neither of us moved closer. After a minute, I grabbed my water bottle from the counter. I should probably get some sleep before my shift. Right, she said softly. I walked toward the stairs. Halfway up, I heard her call my name. Daniel. I stopped but didn't turn around. Yeah. There was a pause. A long one. Then she said, nothing. Never mind. Later that night, I sat on my bed staring at my phone again. My thumb hovered over a message box. Hey. About earlier. I typed it. Read it twice. Then deleted it. The house was quiet again. And I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life had started a sentence and forgotten how to finish it. Emma stayed 4 days. The house sounded different with her there. Music from her phone sometimes drifted down the hallway. Cabinets opened louder. The front door slammed once or twice in a way Sara never would have allowed before. It wasn't unpleasant. Just different. I kept mostly to my room. Work helped. Long shifts meant I could come home late and slip upstairs without stepping into the kitchen. Still, once or twice I heard Sara laughing downstairs with her daughter. A light, easy laugh. I realized then I had never really heard that version of her before. And for some reason that made something in my chest feel strange. Not jealousy exactly. Just the quiet understanding that there were whole parts of her life I had never been meant to see. The fourth evening, I came home to silence again. Emma's suitcase was gone from the hallway. The house had returned to its old rhythm. Sara was in the kitchen. Of course she was. The same small lamp near the sink was on. The thermos sat beside it like it had been waiting. She looked up when I stepped in. "Oh," she said softly. "You're back. Looks like it." For a second, neither of us moved. Then she reached for the thermos. "Tea." I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." She poured it into 2 mugs. The familiar clink of ceramic against the counter filled the quiet space between us. We sat at the table again. The same seats as before, like the house had quietly reset itself. "My daughter likes you," Sara said after a moment. I blinked. She talked to me for about 10 seconds. Sara smiled faintly. "That's a lot for her." I looked down at my mug. "She seems good." "She is." Her fingers rested lightly around the mug, but she didn't drink. "Her father's moving to Vancouver next year," she said suddenly. I looked up. "She's deciding if she wants to go with him." "That's a big decision." "Yeah." The word sat there for a moment. Then Sara exhaled slowly. "I almost sold the house last year," she said. "That caught me off guard." "Why didn't you?" She shrugged slightly. "Some part of me thought maybe life wasn't finished with it yet." I watched the way she traced a small circle on the table with her fingertip. "You ever feel like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like you're standing right at the edge of something, and you don't know if stepping forward is brave or just stupid." I let out a quiet breath. "Yeah," I said. "Lately." Our eyes met. Neither of us looked away this time. "I didn't avoid you because I didn't want to see you," she said. "I figured. I avoided you because I did." That landed softly but heavily. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing the back of my neck. "You know this is complicated," she said. "I know. You're 27. I'm aware. And I'm your landlady. Technically." She almost laughed at that. But her eyes were serious. "What happens if this goes badly?" she asked. I thought about that for a moment. The house. The quiet mornings. The fragile rhythm we'd built without meaning to. "Then it goes badly," I said honestly. She studied my face like she was weighing something. Finally she asked, "And you'd risk that?" I shrugged slightly. "I think I already did." The kitchen fell quiet again. Sara reached across the table slowly. Not dramatically, just enough for her fingers to brush the back of my hand. Warm. Real. She held it there for a second. Then she looked up at me and gave a small, uncertain smile. "Okay," she said. A few weeks passed before anything really changed. Not dramatically. Not in the way movies pretend things do after a moment like that. Life mostly continued the same. I still worked late shifts. Sara still woke up earlier than anyone should. The house still creaked in the same places when the temperature dropped at night. But small things shifted. The kitchen light stayed on longer. Sometimes when I came downstairs after work, the thermos would already be sitting on the counter with 2 mugs beside it. Not a note, not a question, just there. One morning, I came down around 8:47 a.m. I remember the time because the microwave clock blinked it right when I stepped into the kitchen. Sara was standing by the window again, exactly the way she had been the first morning I noticed the package outside her door. Her hair was loosely tied back this time. Sunlight rested across the counter in a warm strip. She didn't turn around when I walked in. "You're awake earlier than usual," she said. "You left the kitchen light on." That was intentional. I grabbed a mug and poured tea from the thermos. "Bribery?" I asked. She shrugged lightly. "Maybe." We stood there quietly for a moment. Not awkward, just familiar. The kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled anymore. Outside, someone down the street started their car. Sara leaned her hip against the counter and looked at me. "My daughter decided to stay here," she said. "With you. For now." "That's good." She said, "The house feels calmer than it used to." I smiled faintly. "Guess that's an upgrade." Sara studied me for a second like she was thinking about something. Then she said, "She also asked if you're always this quiet." "What did you tell her?" "That you're only quiet when you're thinking too much." I laughed under my breath. Fair. Later that evening, we ended up in the backyard again. Same bench. Same uneven wooden slats. The air carried that soft, early spring chill that made the world feel slower. Sara held her mug with both hands the way she always did. "You know," she said after a while, "when that package showed up outside my door," I glanced over at her. "You never told me what was inside." She smiled slightly. "It was just an old photo album I ordered online." "Why did that matter?" She looked down at the mug. because the pictures were from a version of my life that felt finished. The wind stirred lightly through the tree branches above us. "And now?" I asked. Sara didn't answer right away. Instead, she nudged my shoulder gently with hers. Not dramatic, just enough to be noticeable. "Now it feels like maybe the story wasn't done yet," she said. We sat there quietly after that. No big declaration. No perfect ending. Just the steady comfort of being in the same place at the same time. Eventually, she reached over and adjusted the sleeve of my jacket without thinking. A small habit she had started doing recently. I looked at her. "You know what's funny?" I said. "What?" "That package almost stayed outside your door forever." Sara smiled softly. "Yeah." Then she took a sip of tea and looked out toward the quiet fence. And for the first time since moving into that house, the silence between us felt complete. "Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories would you like to hear next?"